God bless AFP. Wow. I am thrilled to be with each of you today. Thank you for that incredibly, incredibly warm welcome. You know, my wife Heidi and me, we are blessed to have two little girls at home, Caroline and Catherine. Caroline's 5, Catherine is 3. I do indeed. Now, for every one of you who are parents, you know God makes every child very, very different. Well, Catherine is the essence of sweetness. She is just a sweet, sweet, sweet little girl. Caroline is a rascal. So last fall, Heidi had both girls up in D.C. one weekend. It was a beautiful fall day, a Sunday afternoon. We decided to drive down to Mount Vernon, show the girls Mount Vernon. We're driving down the George Washington Parkway. The trees are turning. They're red and orange and yellow. We're driving down. Caroline's sitting behind me in her car seat, kicking the back of my seat like she always does. Catherine's sitting over on the other side. And Caroline asks her little sister, she says, "Catherine, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And Catherine says, "I want to work in the U.S. Senate. I want to work with Daddy." And Caroline says, "Oh, that's boring. We're going to be rock stars instead." And then she tosses out the zinger. She says, "Besides, Daddy will be dead by then." It's a real conversation. I'm sitting there going, "Hello, I'm right in front of you." It kind of made me wonder if maybe Caroline had been speaking with Republican leadership.
You are the leadership.
Even more importantly, you are the leadership. And I'll tell you something, there is nothing as scary in Washington as what I'm going to face tonight. So next week, Caroline turns 6. I'm leaving here to run to the airport to get on an airplane. When I get off of the airplane, I'm going to a princess sleepover party. Now, last week, Caroline told me, she said, "Daddy, you're not invited because you're not a girl." And I said, "Sweetheart, if it is in my house, Daddy is always invited." And she proceeded to put her hands on her hips and to say, "Fine, then we're going to play Attack the Daddy." So in just a few hours, I'm going to walk into my home to be greeted by 11 6-year-old girls dressed as Disney princesses trying to tackle me. So let me ask for your fervent prayers that I might see tomorrow morning. You know, I am thrilled to be back here, to be back with so many friends in New Hampshire. I'm thrilled to just encourage you. Y'all are here because there is a sense of urgency to what's happening in this country. Y'all are here because you understand this is not an ordinary time in politics. The threats we're facing are extraordinary. The most common thing I hear traveling the country is men and women come up to me, they put their hand on my shoulder, they look me in the eyes, they say, "Ted, I'm scared. I'm scared for the direction of this country. I'm scared for my kids and grandkids. We are bankrupting the greatest nation in the history of the world." Let me tell you something, though. I am profoundly, profoundly optimistic that together we're going to turn this nation around. Let me tell you 3 things we need to do to turn this nation around. Number 1, we need to stand for liberty. Liberty has never been more under assault than it is right now. This administration, it seems, this president is trying to go down the Bill of Rights and violate each and every one of them. You know, we look at the IRS that doesn't respect the First Amendment, is going after individual citizens saying, tell us what books you're reading, tell us the content of your prayers. Let me tell you something. The federal government has no business asking any American the content of our prayers. Although I do kind of wish the answer had been, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. You look at the Second Amendment. Vice President Joe Biden. You know the nice thing? You don't need a punchline. You just say his name. I promise you, try this. The next time you're at a party, walk up to someone, just say, Vice President Joe Biden, and close your mouth. They will crack up laughing. But Joe Biden said, if anybody attacks your house, just go outside with a double-barreled shotgun and fire both barrels in the air. Now listen, that is very, very good advice. If it so happens you're being attacked by a flock of geese. You look at the Fourth and Fifth Amendments, our right to privacy. How many of y'all have your cell phones? I'd like to ask you, please leave your cell phones on. I want to make sure President Obama hears every word I have to say today. You look at the 10th Amendment with the federal government trying to intrude into the prerogatives of the states all across the board, things like trying to set educational standards. Let me tell you right now, we need to repeal Common Core. And then there is the pattern of lawlessness in this administration. Ignoring law after law after law. If this president doesn't agree with the law, he refuses to enforce it, whether it's immigration laws or welfare laws or marriage laws or drug laws. And then you take Obamacare. Please take Obamacare. 30 times this president has simply unilaterally changed the law. There's no authority in the law for that. How many of y'all remember 6th grade civics? You remember Schoolhouse Rock, how a bill becomes a law? Apparently the president missed that day. We have never had a president assert the authority to ignore and unilaterally change the law the way this president is doing so. And this should trouble everyone, not just Republicans, but Democrats, independents, libertarians, anyone who cares about rule of law and the Constitution. Because when you have a president who can pick and choose which laws to follow and which laws to ignore, then you no longer have a president. So we need to, number one, stand for liberty. Number two, we need to stand for growth and opportunity. My number one priority in office from the day I was elected is bringing back jobs and economic growth. And the reason is simple. That is the top priority of the 26 million Texans I'm proud to represent, and it's the top priority of the American people all across this great country. You want to know why people are frustrated out of their mind at Washington? The biggest divide we've got in this country, it's not between Democrats and Republicans. It is between entrenched politicians in both parties in Washington and the American people. And all across this country, people are frustrated, going, what is wrong with them? They get elected, they go to Washington, and they stop listening to us. They stop listening. The top priority of the American people is jobs and economic growth, and in the year and a half I've been in Harry Reid's Senate, we haven't spent even a minute talking about jobs and economic growth. It simply isn't a priority. We haven't talked about fundamental tax reform. And I'll tell you the most important tax reform, we should abolish the IRS. For 5 years, we have been trapped in the great stagnation under President Obama. His policies are not working. And, you know, the rich and powerful, those who walk the corridors of power, are getting fat and happy under the Obama economic agenda. The top 1%, the millionaires and billionaires the president loves to demagogue, they earn a higher share of our national income than any year since 1928. But not to worry, nothing bad happened after 1928. The people who have been hurt the most by the Obama economy are the most vulnerable among us. It's young people, it's Hispanics, it's African Americans, it's single moms. It's people who are struggling to climb the economic ladder and to reach the American dream. You know, I try to think of all of the issues and challenges we face from the perspective of my dad. 57 years ago, my dad fled Cuba. He'd been in prison, he'd been tortured, he'd been beaten almost to death in a Cuban jail. And he came to America at age 18, fleeing the Batista regime. He couldn't speak English, he had $100 sewn into his underwear. I actually don't advise carrying money in your underwear. But he got a job washing dishes, making 50 cents an hour. And he worked 7 days a week. He paid his way through school. He went on to start a small business and to work towards the American dream. Now, I think about the policies we're seeing today and how they would have impacted my dad when he was washing dishes. If my father were still washing dishes today, the odds are very, very high he would have lost his job because of the $1.7 trillion in new taxes from this administration, because of the crushing regulations that are hammering small businesses, and small businesses generate 2/3 of the new jobs in our economy. And it is, by the way, kids like my dad, teenage immigrants who are struggling, who are the ones bearing the brunt, getting hammered by the Obama economic agenda. If my dad had been lucky enough not to lose his job, the odds are overwhelming he would have had his hours forcibly reduced to 28, 29 hours a week. And you can't pay your bills, you can't feed your kids, you can't pay your way through college on 28 hours a week. The reason we should support growth most fundamentally is it's foundational to opportunity. The opportunity of everyone to achieve the American dream. I think every Republican should have 2 words tattooed on their hands: growth and opportunity. Heck, I'm so inspired by y'all, I may get an eagle tattooed on my chest. Exactly. And that leads to my third and final point. How do we turn this country around? Empower the people. I am powerfully, powerfully optimistic and hopeful because of each of you. The answers are not going to come from Washington. The book of Ecclesiastes tells us there's nothing new under the sun. I think where we are right now is eerily, is uncannily like the late 1970s. Late 1970s, you had Jimmy Carter in the White House. You had the same failed economic policies, out of control spending and taxes and regulation, produced the exact same misery and stagnation. You had the same feckless foreign policy, the same naivete, making the world a much, much more dangerous place. And all across this country, we saw a grassroots movement of millions of men and women who came together and became the Reagan Revolution. Now, that didn't come from Washington. Washington despised Ronald Reagan. It came from the American people. The reason I am optimistic is I'm blessed to have the opportunity serving in the Senate to travel across the country. Let me tell you, the same thing is happening all over this country. People are waking up. Men and women who've never been involved in politics, they're looking up going, what is happening to this country? We're losing our freedom. We're losing the future for our kids and grandkids. Let's get back. Let's get back to the free market principles. Let's get back to the constitutional liberties that this nation was built on. So I'm spending my time not focused on Washington, not trying to convince Washington of anything, because they ain't listening. What I'm trying to do instead is help energize and mobilize the American people. All of you who said you had cell phones before, if you're willing to come together and join a grassroots army, I would ask each of you with your cell phones to text the word growth to the number 33733. Let me give that to you again. 33733. Text the word growth. We are working. Look, we will not turn the country around unless we are able to energize and mobilize millions of Americans to hold Washington accountable. I don't know if you remember the movie The Usual Suspects, where it talked about the greatest trick the devil ever played was to convince the world he didn't exist. Well, the greatest lie that the media tries to play is to convince us that the American people don't believe in the values this country was built on. It's simply not true. If you listen to Democrats, if you listen to the media, although I repeat myself, they will tell you there is no hope. They will tell you we cannot turn this around. They will tell you you cannot stop Obamacare. They will tell you that Kathleen Sebelius resigning is a result of Obamacare's success. Well, if that's true, then I hope every Democrat will follow her path and resign as well. You want to see the power of the grassroots? Last summer, last fall, millions of Americans rose up and said, we don't want the train wreck, we don't want the disaster, we don't want the suffering that is coming from Obamacare. And as a result of so many millions of Americans saying that, we elevated the debate. And where are we right now today as a result of your efforts? Today, President Obama is at his lowest approval rating he has ever been in 6 years in office. Today, Obamacare is at its lowest approval rating it's ever been since the day it was signed into law. If you want to know where the country is, it is often a good barometer to look at the late-night comics. Last fall, Jay Leno said, So, President Obama called me. He said, Jay, if you like your job, you can keep it. A couple weeks later, Jay went back to the same theme. He said, So, holidays are coming up. Thanksgiving. You know, the first Thanksgiving. The Pilgrims said to the Indians, if you like your land, you can keep it. Let me tell you something. As a result of the men and women in this room, as the result of millions of men and women standing up and saying Obamacare is a disaster, it is not working, it is hurting millions of Americans, I am convinced we are going to repeal every single word of Obamacare. It will not come from Washington, but it will come from each of you. You know, New Hampshire is the live free or die state. Still. And forever. In Texas, that's a sentiment we can relate to. But let me tell you something that my father has said many, many times. He said, I saw freedom taken away in Cuba, and I'll die before I let it happen again in this country. That is why we're here. That is why you're here, to keep spreading the message of freedom to your friends, to your family, to your neighbors, to everyone, to say, together, let's come together. Let's get back to the free market principles, get back to the constitutional liberties, get back to the incredible opportunity America offers. And I'll tell you, I am honored, I am humbled, I am thrilled to stand with each and every one of you as we work together to bring back morning in America, as we work together to restore that shining city on a hill that is the United States of America. Thank you, and God bless you.